Welcome. My name's David Bailey and I'm a life coach, and I'm joined today with my good friend Luca, who is a nutritionist all the way from Copenhagen.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah. Great to see you again.
Indeed, indeed. It's a lovely afternoon in Copenhagen today.
Nice. So Luca, you and I go back to when you were living in London, or when we were both in the UK together. And I wanted to invite you on today to share a bit about your own personal journey of how you completely shifted your life from working in finance in London to now living in Copenhagen, running retreats, being very much focused on nutrition and yoga, and also the specific benefits of fasting and the kind of work that you do for people if they were interested in this kind of topic. So if you could maybe start by sharing a little bit about yourself, and how the idea of nutrition even kind of came into your awareness. What was it that got to that point where you decided to look into it more, because it's not something that everybody's aware of?
Absolutely, yes. I'd say I had more of a conventional lifestyle up until 2013. And I was working in the corporate sector in financial services. I worked for a large company called Bloomberg. And I got to a point where my lifestyle was really not satisfying me anymore. So I kind of felt I was not 100% fulfilled for a little while. So for a few years, actually. And London is a fantastic city, so much on offer, very interesting people there, lots of job opportunities. Yet the kind of lifestyle I was doing there was really taxing for me, both psychologically and increasingly physically, okay? So in 2013, I had a bit of a burnout, we can say, which means that I experienced some anxiety and some psychological and physical symptoms that I could not really ignore. And on the back of that, I took off and I went to Brazil first, and then I went to India, Nepal, India, and Thailand. And I started on a journey of self-discovery, and I was really, at the very bottom of my existence at the time. I thought that I had no future. I was, really experiencing lots of pain. And what was great for me was to find yoga.
Mm.
So I got into yoga and I started doing yoga, every day pretty much. And that brought about lots of awareness of myself, and also following studies in philosophy, in yoga, and eventually in nutrition. I was able to change my value system quite a bit, embrace natural therapies, and a much more balanced and sustainable lifestyle for me specifically, okay?
Mm.
So I moved to Kopangan, Thailand, where I am now, and I worked for 2 years for two different wellness, healing, detox centers, which were specialized in the art and science of fasting. So I retrained as a nutritional therapist in the UK. So I had a very good, solid nutrition background, mostly scientific, but also naturopathic. So it's a way of looking at nutrition which is holistic and functional in nature. And on top of these solid studies that I done, just direct experience of having people coming from all over the world for a fasting program and staying typically 1 week, 10 days, but sometimes up to 28 days without food was really something for me, because I was able to experience firsthand what fasting could do to people. And following that, I said, oh, this is gold. This is great. The best thing I've seen so far. And also it's very enjoyable to take people through this roller coaster. The first 2-3 days tend to be quite challenging. And but then people experience, typically, not all the time, but often experience high energy states, connection, they tap into their subconscious, they have dreams, they start looking at their lives with, from a different perspectives almost. And so it's the transformation they go through during the programs is really remarkable. And I said, this is fantastic. I love it. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's why I started doing my own fasting programs, taking people through a journey of fasting in Copenhagen and online. Then I did my first retreat, which was a set-day retreat. And in January this year, I launched the Smiley Retreat, which is a fully residential wellness center to help people detox, so go through fasting, but also intermittent fasting or even holidays with whole food, so clean, balanced whole food. All these paired with yoga, holistic classes and experiences, and of course in a beautiful setting which is Copenhagen, which offers pristine nature, and lots of sort of healers and therapists are living in Copenhagen. So the whole experience of coming here, detoxing and experiencing holistic classes and contact with nature is really fantastic. And that's me now, basically 4 years later, living in Copenhagen, waiting, of course, for tourism to start again, because at the moment we are closed.
Yeah.
But also supporting people online through their journeys from home, again with fasting, intermittent fasting, and clean food.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to rewind a little bit to the beginning of your journey, just because I know, because I've also worked in some of the retreats that you have, and I know that when people are typically at that state where where they're prepared to go on a holiday, where they want to go on a retreat, things aren't always fantastic. And I'm just interested to know from you, what do you think was it that was affecting you so much emotionally and physically, and what specifically were the kind of symptoms you were experiencing when you felt like you were at breaking point and like took on your journey across Southeast Asia?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are in a lifestyle and you consistently or often experience negative emotions, feelings of anxiety, you have physical ailments like bad digestion, for instance, sleeping problems, signs of inflammation. And this is not just because you're going through a specific, maybe project at work, which requires a little bit more effort. It's something actually that you see regularly in your life. So if over the past couple of years, for instance, you experience negative emotions and pain on a regular basis, I mean, this is a clear sign that you're not doing very well in life. From an outer perspective, you might be employed and potentially having a high status job that pays very good money, that is intellectually stimulating. So there are, of course, lots of perks that go with it. But then if you have these symptoms, you gotta start thinking that maybe what you're doing or your approach in life is not really fulfilling. And if you don't do something about it, things ain't gonna get better. Typically, as you get older and as you move from stress that is acute and comes and goes to a state of chronic stress where your cortisol levels are permanently high, I mean, you're gonna experience more and more ailments and physical and psychological problems, okay? And so if you catch yourself drinking alcohol regularly and too much, if you see yourself having to, help yourself with junk food, or if you go back to food, you're putting on weight quite considerably, for instance, just take some space, create some perspective. And how can you do that? Well, one of the best ways to do that is, you leave your current environment, you fly to the other side of the world where the nature is very beautiful, where you don't know anybody. You can check in a specialized resort, which have a support, framework in place. And you can indeed work on your ailments immediately, as well as be inspired to, feel yourself or look at yourself from a higher level, from a different perspectives, and maybe you decide to go back home and make some changes, okay? So that's why people like retreats.
And for you, what do you think was leading specifically to the negative emotions and the stress? Because I know you said you were like intellectually stimulated, you had a good job, you had all the trappings of success, but what specifically for you did you find that was not fulfilling you or leading you to have such negative emotions that it was kind of creating all these coping strategies of drinking and eating unhealthy and the physical ailments that you had?
So what happens is, first of all, I like to say that I was drinking, but only at the weekends, thanks God. Yeah, but I know people that drink all the time, and that's a real sign.
Mm.
Yeah, physical ailments were related to eating too much, but mostly because I was in a state of stress, and I had a job that was very demanding. So I would spend about 10 hours a day between traveling to work, being at work, and traveling back, like lots of people do.
Mm.
But then when I was at work, I was just coping with it. I was not really excited by what I was doing, okay?
Mm.
So I was not able to use my creativity. I was not able to nourish myself from a spiritual perspective as well. I had a set of projects and chores and things I had to do. I would do them well enough, but I was never really totally motivated or totally feeling in the flow. I think what you want to experience, and what I do now, is that I experience moments of flow on a regular basis. A moment of flow is when you're doing something that you like, you're totally engaged, from the task, and you get loads of sort of pleasure. It's kind of, your mind might have some thoughts in the background, but it's totally focused on what you're doing. You almost like immerse yourself in what you're doing. And at the end of this work that you're doing, or whatever state of flow you're experiencing, at the end of it, you don't feel depleted. You actually feel energized. You feel nourished by it,
Mm.
So when I take care of people now, and I see them going through a journey of transformation, and I feel their emotions and their pain, and I know I'm doing, first of all, something very useful and very good for them, and also I'm doing it in a creative way because I have a strong methodology, but then I can apply different holistic classes, and I can inspire people in different ways depending on what they are and what they do.
Mm.
And at the end of it, I see the results, which I didn't see so much or so regularly in my previous jobs. And I feel totally fulfilled and satisfied, and I even feel energized at the end of the day. So that's what I mean, having something that you love doing, where you are totally present, and you feel very nourished and very happy at the end, And that's what I always encourage people to look for,
Mm. So it seems that the satisfaction and the fulfillment that you have right now um, is a key factor in your happiness, in your sense of meaning with your own life and your own well-being.
Absolutely, that is true. And, also I find time for physical exercise a lot more than earlier. I have time for meditation twice a day that I do all the time. The quality of the food I eat is unprecedented in my personal history in terms of the balance of it, and also the fact that it brings lots of micronutrients and is very nourishing in nature. Also, I have time for meaningful connections with people. I feel I'm more present. I experience nature and contact with others in a different way too, So it's really wonderful.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I love this because my work's all about creating a meaningful life, and that what I see what you're doing is very meaningful, and you've created it from scratch because I know that when you moved to Thailand, you didn't know anybody, and yet you've managed to build a new lifestyle for yourself. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So I'm interested because I know, well, from experience from being together, that the fasting program that you do, um, obviously the main benefit that people at least go into it for is for weight loss. But you mentioned that there were other benefits that go along with that. So if yeah, could you speak a bit about that? Like, what is the experience of if somebody was, say, at working with you, Luca? You know, they've come, they want to, typically they're stressed, they want to lose weight. What would be the experience of say doing a retreat with yourself be like, and what could the benefits they could expect from that kind of work?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say that weight loss is more of an added bonus. So typically, it's not the goal of the retreat. It can be there's a minority of people that's what they want to achieve primarily. But most people don't come to the retreat for weight loss. They do come to the retreat because they have either inflammatory problems, digestive problems, they might have cardiovascular issues, or they might have just experiences of imbalance in the body, okay? So they might just not feel quite what they used to in the past. And they want something which is not the typical holiday where you go on a beach and you eat more than when you were back home and you drink more than when you were back home. And then you need another holiday when you go back home because you're even more tired than when you left, okay?
Yeah.
They want something that is quite a high impact and very quickly can give them a mid-term solution, at least. So what I always try to do is to invest in people and also in the relationship so that we can be in touch and I can take care of them almost on a permanent basis, or at least for a longer period of time. Remember that I also do online programs. So if somebody comes to the Smiley Retreat in Copangan, then they can go back home and I can still help them online with meal plans, with a structure around nutrition, with a structure around relaxation and, in lifestyle, okay? But when they are here, is remarkable because fasting can be a very effective against inflammation, against the damage of oxidation, for instance. When you're fasting, the body goes through quite a bit of metabolic changes. So the first remarkable thing happening is that your insulin response drops. Many people on an unbalanced lifestyle and also with stress as well as simple carbohydrates and sugary stuff and alcohol, they have a problem because they trigger release of insulin on a regular basis, okay? So if you have an unbalanced meal, you create inflammation in the body. There's lots of insulin response because insulin is the hormone that takes the sugar out of the bloodstream and puts it into the cells. And, over time, having these spikes of insulin all the time and being stress also is terrible for something called insulin resistance, okay? So over time, the body is gonna be literally taxed by this lifestyle, and in order for you to heal and rebalance yourself, you gotta cut back the insulin response.
Yeah, can I
Because
just stop you there, because I know
yes.
you're obviously very well versed in the nutritional terms, but for someone that like a layman, what you're talking about the insulin response, what would be the physical and mental symptoms of something like that?
Sure. Whenever you eat something which is high sugar, for instance, so let's say you're having, a sandwich with white bread, for instance, yeah, and you're having this white bread, the glycemic index of the bread is very high, which means that the body turns the starch into the bread into sugar very quickly. That goes into the bloodstream very quickly, and sugar in the bloodstream can be dangerous if it's too much, okay? So whenever there's too much sugar in the bloodstream, the insulin from the pancreas is released, and insulin takes the blood sugar out and into the cells. Okay, so you're going through a regime where you're eating something unbalanced, you spike your blood sugar levels, you spike your insulin response, there is abrupt taking away the sugar from the bloodstream and bringing it into the cells. So you go from a high sugar level to a drop immediately, so high sugar, so a sugar rush to a sugar drop. When you have the sugar high, you feel good because sugar is energy. Yeah, the body uses sugar for energy production. But then when the sugar drops, you feel grumpy. You experience, bad moods. You feel hungry, for instance, or you feel snappy. And what you do, you tend to medicate yourself by eating again something unbalanced, or having a coffee that also has a similar sort of response. Yeah, the coffee also triggers release of glucose from the liver. Okay. So you go to sugar high, where you feel great, sugar low where you feel bad, sugar high where you feel great, sugar low when you feel bad again. This is very inflammatory for the body, very taxing, but also emotionally is a bit of a roller coaster. So you're just going from a high to a low, a high to a low, and it's not very, very good for you. You get very tired, both physically and mentally at the end of the day. Also, if you're having an unbalanced diet, typically you don't take enough vitamins and minerals, which are very good, again, for against oxidation, which is a process in the body that ages the body, is natural, but you can fight oxidation with antioxidants, the minerals and the vitamins I'm talking about. And all these sort of roller coaster when you're young, like if you're a strong individual in your 20s, you don't have so many symptoms. I mean, you might not feel very present or a little bit scattered emotionally, but physically speaking, you're very strong. But then if you get into your 30s and you continue in your 40s and 50s, that is really, really bad. And then you're going to start feeling more and more serious symptoms moving forward.
So the symptoms of that kind of lifestyle or that kind of diet would be just feeling emotionally on a high and then a low, high and also energetically similarly. And when you talk about the inflammation, because would the symptoms of that be like aching, or what would be the physical symptoms of that kind of thing? I know that's maybe quite a general topic, but just to get a bit more clarity for people watching.
Sure. So inflammation is called the silent killer because inflammation doesn't kill. You don't have related symptoms of inflammation until much later, particularly inflammation that you have in your cardiovascular system. Okay. So inflammation, if you think of the word inflammation, you think of flames. So you can associate inflammation with like heat, with the swelling, with the redness. If you have a small cut on the arm here, and there is some damage to the tissue, and also maybe some bacteria that get into the cut, the immune system, which is responsible for inflammation, rushes different components like macrophages, like white blood cells. So different components of the immune system go to the problem, clear the problem, so get rid of like the old cells, the damaged cells, etc., and then the body regenerates healthy skin, and then the problem is solved. So this is what we call acute inflammation. But a chronic inflammation instead is when you smoke cigarettes on a daily basis, or you are exposed to toxins from the food on a daily basis, or you're spiking your blood sugar levels all the time, and that's very taxing for the body. So what happens is that you are damaging the body, you have micro lesions in your lungs because of the cigarette smoke, or you have micro lesions in your digestive system because of the junk food that you eat. So there is no acute inflammation, it's a subclinical, sub-level chronic inflammation all the time. The immune system is constantly activated. And, over time, I'm talking about decades here, that can really damage your cardiovascular system, for instance, okay? Or your digestion can really go out of balance, and you can experience lots of physical pain because you're bloated, because you have irritable bowel syndrome, irregular bowel movements, you don't eliminate properly, etc. So these are, the ultimate sort of symptoms of inflammation. Of course, inflammation can also manifest when you have back problems. If you injure your back, you also have inflammation. Whenever you injure yourself, there is inflammation because that's a natural response to the body. And as I said, acute inflammation within certain limits is benign because you have a problem. The body resolves it within a certain time frame. Chronic inflammation is related to your lifestyle. It's there all the time, and it's gonna, really damage you over the years and the decades.
Yeah, that's very fascinating because what's occurring to me on a psychological basis, I think that there's a lot of similarities with people that have like chronic stress, chronic anxiety, like the stress response, just as the inflammation response. It's healthy, it's natural, it's there to actually help us survive. But when we experience some kind of trauma, in the case of psychology, some kind of event that is emotionally overwhelming or stressful, it gets triggered. And unless there is, unless the emotions are fully felt through, it will just be like a low level underlying kind of chronic stress that is causing all sorts of emotional issues. And it sounds very much like there's a parallel to that with the body, like the inflammation response is healthy and natural, but through the prolonged unhealthy diets, it's just triggering that response, and then it causes all sorts of problems that otherwise, well, shouldn't be really there for a healthy individual.
Sure, sure, sure. And one of the first things you can do from a nutritional perspective, as I mentioned, is to cut back on your insulin response, which means that you want to have, so the quickest way to get rid of insulin is to stop eating, because insulin is triggered by food. If you don't eat anything, insulin goes way down. And insulin is a very powerful hormone in the body. So whenever insulin is high or insulin is low, different hormones will upregulate and downregulate as well, okay? So for instance, growth hormone, which is very important for lean tissue, for muscles, yeah? Insulin is low, growth hormone goes up. Glucagon, which is the opposite of insulin. So when insulin is low, glucagon goes high. And then when you have states of glucagon, the body taps into your fat reserves. And remember that when you have insulin resistance, very often you have the so-called VAT, which is not a tax, is the visceral adipose tissue. So you have your belly fat, okay? And it's very difficult to get rid of belly fat without looking at insulin. The best way to get rid of belly fat is like dropping down the insulin response, glucagon goes up, your body starts tapping into the fat reserves, and if you have a fatty liver problem, for instance, or you have accumulation of fat around your liver or around your organs, then the body is going to use that fat for energy production instead of glucose, okay? So fasting is the most effective way, possibly one of the most effective ways at least, to cut back on insulin, and also to have a strong impact on your hormones and reset and rebalance your hormones, okay? And then once you rebalance your hormones, you might see that you sleep better. You might see that you're more efficient at keeping a lean body. You might feel also, you know, that if you have premenstrual syndrome, or if you have problem with your sex hormones, you know, you might also heal there. So that's why I say fasting is very holistic, because, you know, there are so many things that get affected during a state of fasting. Yeah. And, you know, digestion is another case. You know, if you keep on eating 4 or 5 times a day, and you have you know, your body is overwhelmed and you're not digesting very well. And then you might actually have over time some problems with the integrity of the lining of the gut, you know, something called, you know, leaky gut syndrome, for instance. Or you might have problem with dysbiosis, which means your you know, the balance of good and bad bacteria in your gut is not functioning anymore. Then you just don't eat for a week. You add some herbal supplements as well. You help the gut rebalance. Then you go on a regime of clean, healthy, whole food, and you see that you can keep the insulin response low, which means you're building insulin sensitivity, which is great. Your hormones are still not going to be pushed so hard again, and you'll be able to rebuild the lining of the gut. You're going to be able to, you know, support your cardiovascular system if you have dyslipidemia, too much fat in the blood, if you have high triglycerides, for instance. This is all proven, you know, there's research showing that. And that's why I always say, if you're really pushed hard, you're really unbalanced, and you seem not to be able to help yourself anymore, yeah, and you're kind of giving up and just drinking and eating and soldiering on, you gotta go to a point where you say, okay, that's enough. If you can help yourself at home, great. If not, you just go on a plane, you go to a retreat, and, you know, for 10 days, we work immediately on your problems. We give the body space and time to regenerate, and we give you lots of good emotions and a structure for you to go back home and do something about your lifestyle.
Okay, so it's like a reset almost for the body from all these sort of unhealthy habits or eating that people have been engaging in. And what is the actual experience of like coming on a retreat like? I mean, you've spoken a lot about the nutritional and the biological aspects of it, but what is the experience of someone that is a guest or a client coming on a retreat? What would that be like for them?
Well, it's a very nice hospitality experience, obviously. So you come to either Koh Samui Airport or Suratani Airport in Thailand, and then there's a taxi that, you take a boat, you come to Koh Phangan, there's a taxi that picks you up, you come to the resort. The resort is, almost a 4-star, 3.5 star, I'll say. So we have a very nice, sort of very nice rooms. We have a very nice environment. We have infinity pool. We have a sauna complex. You're gonna go through a regime of Thai oil massage. You're gonna, of course, have a consultation with a trained holistic practitioner or naturopath. And you're gonna be given, typically the first day is healthy food. So you go on a pre-cleanse day. We also prepare your liver with liver drinks. And then when you start the fasting regime, there is a schedule that you follow. In the morning, there is optional yoga. If you're very tired, you don't feel like doing much, that's absolutely fine. Otherwise, we like to help you move and reconnect with yoga. Then we have classes in the afternoon. This could be anything from sound healing, from trauma release exercising, different sharing circles so that you can also meet some of the other people on a similar journey. So we create an environment of support, an environment of connection, an environment which is conducive for people to share their emotion, their personal stories if they feel like. Yeah, remember, nothing is obligatory. Yeah, so you are supported. You can choose to do things, or you can choose just to hang out by the beach. On the beach or by the swimming pool and sleep all day, it's up to you. But there is lots of support, as there's a very well known, a very well clear structure for you to follow, so it's easy. Yeah. And the first 2-3 days is not easy because, of course, the body has to go through quite a bit of a metabolic changes, as I mentioned earlier. So the first 2-3 days are a little bit more challenging. And that's where we concentrate our sort of emotional support, just to make sure that you go through the first 2-3 days. And then once you're in a state of ketosis or in a more advanced state of fasting, then things get a lot easier typically. And at the end of the program, you have lost weight. Many people experience a state of glow in their face. Even the white part of the eye get clearer. They feel a lot more emotionally positive. They feel they achieved something in life. They feel motivated. I mean, everything is there for you to really have a very good experience. For some people, it's just a good experience. For some people, it's a transformational experience as well. So
yeah.
And that's what it is.
With the emotional support, how does that happen? Is that from yourself? Like what would that typically be like?
Yes, it's myself, obviously, and also staff in the retreat, so a trained holistic therapist, and there is, as I mentioned, massage included, so that's very relaxing. And the support is both in person, so there's always somebody that you can talk to if you need to. Also, you tend to have quite a bit of emotional support from other people going through a similar experience, but also there is a support online too, yeah? So that if you're in your room, you don't feel like getting out of your room and come to the Smiley Lounge, which is the place inside the retreat where people meet and mingle. If you just don't feel like at all, you can always chat with somebody online, so either myself or one of the staff, and you can get supported immediately, both from a practical perspective, if there's something that you want to know about the program specifically, or from a more of an emotional standpoint as well. This is all topped by the fact that Thailand is a very hospitable country. There is a culture of care and hospitality in Thailand, and this is a wonderful place to relax and lay back. So I really recommend pretty much everybody to try the experience at least once, and I'm pretty sure that if you try once, you're going to try it again, because the advantage of having a healthy wellness rebalancing holiday versus a standard holiday are huge. You know, there's a big difference between the two. In the way you feel afterwards, in the way you go back home, regenerated, reset, with a lot more can-do attitude. You can be more effective in your day-to-day work, for instance. You can be more effective with some of the key relationships in your life. And if you want to have support all the time, even when you leave, you know, the organization is here for, you know, providing, you know, nutritional support as well as coaching when you go back home too.
Yeah. And within the retreats in itself, is there like at the end of it do you give people some kind of plan for yeah, nutritional plan, just so they have the information to go ahead and use that when they leave?
So it depends. So there's lots of opportunity for personal development and learning. It's up to you. Yeah, if you really just want to sleep, you can sleep, as I mentioned. So I don't force anything on people. Absolutely. Yeah, we are there at the Smiley Retreat to support people, and every personal journey is personal, so slightly different. If you want to engage with both and the staff of the retreat and holistic therapists, you can be inspired, and you can learn so much that the retreat can actually be perceived as a course almost, where at the end of the course, you're not just experiencing rebalancing and fasting and wellness and well-being, but also you learn how to take some of the elements that you experienced and bring them into your day-to-day life. So the sort of, you know, the educational part of what I do is very, very important. I really believe in it, and it's definitely there for people to experience if they want to.
Yeah. And I was thinking more for, like, for example, like a meal plan or some basics in nutrition, so that when people go back, they don't just immediately fall into the same kind of mistakes. Is there something along those lines that so people have the education to kind of take care of themselves as well?
Absolutely. When you break the fast for a couple of days particularly, you have to introduce food slowly. You have to start with easily digestible food. You have to put a lot more focus on food, at least for 2-3 days. But then we also give people ideas on how to improve their food back home. So as I mentioned, I am a nutritionist myself, so I really believe in the power of food and the power of nutrition, and the nutritional aspect, both from an experiential perspective, but also from a learning perspective, is very, very big in the retreats. So different retreat centers have founders or management with different backgrounds. Okay, my background, my primary background, aside from yoga, is nutrition. So, and you know, I come from a very strong food culture. Nutrition is very, very important to me, and I always try and inspire people to learn about food, learn about themselves in relation to food, and for them to find ways to feed themselves something which is balanced, nourishing, and more fitting.
Okay, yeah. That sounds very cool, and I can't wait to get back out there as well and come visit you as well, Luca.
Let's hope soon. You know, you probably might know that we have a vacancy in the Smiley Retreat as well, you know, for therapists. So we're always looking for passionate therapists with a good, solid background, with experience, because we want to attract the best potential therapists for our guests to have the best possible care we can offer them. So if you do come down, you know, please consider and join us maybe as one of the therapists at least.
Yeah, man, definitely. And if people want to get in touch to look at some of your offerings, to see learn more about the retreat, where's the best place for them to reach you?
So I have a blog, and in the past I used to promote my websites first, but I think that if you want to learn a little bit about my view of the world and how I perceive the world, how I perceive healthy living, balanced living, and lifestyle, nutriyogalife.com maybe is your first port of call, sorry, because it's my personal blog, and you can read a couple of articles and see if what I say resonates with you. Then, if you think you like me or there is some resonance, you can go on smileyretreat.com, which is the residential retreat. And if you're at home and you want to, work with me whilst you are at home, smileynutrition.com is the online practice. And at the moment, it's mostly myself taking care of online guests. In the future, it's going to be different selected therapists based in different parts of the world, providing nutritional consultation and advice as well. Everybody is going to be, of course, trained by me, and we all going to have a way of inspiring people which is consistent and effective. So nutriyogalife.com, Smiley Retreat, Smiley Nutrition, or just send me a message, email, or you can find me on Facebook quite easily. I'm always happy to meet new people.
All right, thank you, Luca. Great speaking with you.
That's lovely, David, and thank you.